Tractate Tainus is a pretty interesting tractate. It's officially about fast days, however it spends a good while discussing rain, its significance, the blessings you say for it, and just generally its importance. Chapter 1 will begin by discussing these points. The first Mishnah begins by discussing the two additional prayers added to the Amidah for rain. The first one, the prayer of Ma'ashiv Haruach Umorid Hageshem. Rabbi Eliezer says we start adding it to prayer from the first day of the holiday of Sukkot, while Rabbi Yeshua says to start from the last day of Sukkot. Now, praying for rain from the first day of the holiday of Sukkot might be a bit problematic, as you're meant to stay and eat outdoors in a sukkah. So Rabbi Eliezer would say that you don't say a prayer for rain, rather the prayer is one that mentions rain, that it should fall in its due season, starting after Sukkot. And you don't say such a prayer even during the summer, as it should only be close to the rainy season. A third opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, says that we start adding this rain prayer on the last day of Sukkot, but specifically only starting from the additional Musaf prayer, and you similarly end the recital of this prayer on the additional Musaf prayer of the holiday of Passover. The Gemara says that it's bringing this point on laws of prayer in the section of tractates involving holidays, as a prior tractate of Rosh Hashanah mentioned that by the holiday of Sukkot, people are judged in regards to the rain that will fall. So now we're continuing on this topic here. The Mishnah referred to rain as the powers of rain, because based on some verses, rain descends with the power of God. It also brings the source for saying rain in the Amidah. Another teaching based on some verses, God has 3 keys that, save for some rare exceptions, are basically never entrusted to an agent. The key of rain, the key of childbirth, and the key of the revival of the dead. Some add the key of sustenance, some say that's included in rain. There's argument of whether Rabbi Eliezer derives his opinion from the mitzvah of lulav or of the water libation service, which will determine whether we start saying the rain prayer by day or by night. And we bring the source that it's learned from the lulav service, which would mean it starts by day. Some hold the same way we mentioned the resurrection of the dead all year, even though it'll only occur in its due time, we also say the prayer for rain all year, even though it'll only happen in its due time. Others disagree, saying that the rain season has a specific time, but the resurrection of the dead can happen any day. Others hold we do learn the prayer from the water libations, which would actually mean, according to that opinion, we would start on the second day of Sukkot. Others say the water libations are actually on the 6th day. We bring some sources for the water libations. We also argue over the days of the performance of the water libation, and which opinion it implies. Like, we say we have a tradition that it was done on all 7 days of the holiday of Sukkot. There are further arguments on this topic. There's also a separate prayer for dew and winds, which we do say, however, it says that they're not obligatory. It's based on a source by Eliyahu and the wicked king Achav. The world could not survive without dew, so it's definitely going to fall. We also bring a source that the world cannot survive without wind, based on a comparison of the wind to the Jewish people, that the world cannot exist without either of them. Based on this, during the summer, if you accidentally say the blessing for wind, it's fine. But if you accidentally say the rain blessing, you have to say it again without it. The inverse applies in the winter. If you forget to pray for wind, again, it's fine. But if you forgot to pray for rain, you have to say it again. The same as wind applies to dew. We also say clouds and wind are not withheld, specifically with early clouds and ordinary clouds. Extraordinary winds are not strictly necessary for things like separating chaff, as you can use a sieve for that. Some other points, clouds and winds that come after rain are secondary to rain. Rain that falls forcefully can raise dust and cause issues. If it falls gently, it's beneficial. It continues to discuss the benefits of wind and clouds after a rainfall and sunshine between patches of clouds. Snow is great for mountains, heavy rain is good for trees, gentle rain is good for produce. It also compares a Torah student to a seed which sprouts, and if he gets heated, it's from Torah, which is compared to fire. Torah scholars are also compared to iron. Some say because they must be steadfast, some say because they support the world with their study. Anyways, in spite of those points, a person should train himself to be calm. A bit of a new topic. 3 people made improper requests, and 2 were answered properly, and 1 was not. The first was Eliezer, Abraham's servant, who prayed that the first girl who offered his camels and him water would be a wife for the forefather Yitzchak. And things worked out. It was the foremother Rivka, but it could have been problematic by someone lame or blind. The next person with an improper prayer was King Shaul, who said that whoever killed Goliath would get great wealth and marry his daughter. Again, it could have been someone problematic, like a slave or a mamzer, an illegitimate child. But it was David, so things worked out. The time an improper prayer didn't work out was by Yiftach the Gileadite, who vowed that if he won his battle, he would offer as a sacrifice the first thing that comes out of his house, which could have been problematic, like a pig or a dog. So things didn't work out for him, and the first person to step out of his house was his daughter, and based on other verses, clearly God did not want her to actually be offered. The vow could have just been annulled, but he decided to offer her anyways. There's also some improper prayers from the Jewish people. They ask that God should be like rain, which is only sometimes, but God answers all the time. A similar point was by the prayer that God should be like a seal, which is sometimes not visible, but God said he'd always be visible. There's debate over if requesting rain is the same as mentioning rain. There's points on the start of the rain prayer. Some say it's said by the translator, others disagree, and there are further points. We say we rule like Rabbi Yehuda, who said that we start saying the rain prayer by the additional Musaf prayer on the last day of Sukkot. There's argument on the topic. We also discussed the point on the diaspora outside of Israel. We have 2 days by the last day of Sukkot, so some say to say it in the Musaf of the first day, not in between, and then start properly from the second day. Others say to do that starting from the first day, but also say it on the afternoon prayer of the first day. Others say to just start on the first day and just go from there, and others agree. This is the law we hold like. New Mishnah. Now, when does the other rain prayer of the same Tal Umatar go up until? Rabbi Yehuda says we stop saying it by Passover's end. Rabbi Meir says, based on a verse, when the month of Nisan ends. The Gemara says that the verse brought references a rain which miraculously fell in Nisan. It also explains the background of this event by Yoel. There was a severe famine. It says the first year they ate all their food in their houses, the second they ate of their fields, the third year they ate all their kosher animals, the fourth they ate their non-kosher animals, the fifth they ate bugs and similar, the sixth they ate the flesh of their sons and daughters, and the seventh they ate their own arms, fulfilling a verse. Then the prophet Yoel told them to sow their fields, and they found grain lying around, hidden in holes. Their grain grew extremely fast and large, and they were eventually able to bring the Omer offering. It also said that God said he wouldn't enter Jerusalem, meaning the heavenly Jerusalem, the counterpart of the earthly Jerusalem. It also says that there is one transgression that causes the wicked to burn in Gehenna, which is the sin of idolatry. There's more points on how bad idolatry is. It also says that Shmuel, the prophet, was old, even though he was 52 when he passed, as he prematurely aged, as he didn't want Shaul to pass during his lifetime, so Shmuel passed early, but he aged, so people didn't think he had passed early from sin. There are sources brought. It also says that some sages were eating, and one taught afterwards, because talking during eating is dangerous, and said that the forefather Yaakov never died, so long as his descendants, the Jewish people, live. So does he. It also says one sage, Rav Nachman, asked another sage, Rav Yitzchak, to bless him. So the sage said it was comparable to a man who rests beneath a shady tree with fruit and a stream, so it already has everything. So he blessed it that his shoots planted from it should be like this tree. So too should the sage's offspring be like you. We further define the types of rain and the times they fall. We possibly rule that the last of the Yora variant of rain falls on the first of the month of Kislev. Others disagree, it's discussed. We need to know the times of these specific rainfalls. The first rainfall to start praying for rain, the third to know when to fast, and the second is relevant for some vows. And also on giving your field's produce to the poor, and for which paths you're allowed to walk on, and to disposing of sabbatical year produce from your house, mainly straw and stubble. We further define certain types of rain and some others. Some say it's good if rain doesn't fall in the month of Teves, as either then the roads are in good condition and people will travel to study Torah, or it's because it won't blight the crops. Others say it's good when rain falls, but that's where there was no rain in prior months. If rain falls on only half a province, people say that's not a curse, unless it falls hard enough that it damages crops. Some also add a prayer of thanksgiving for when rain falls, starting from when puddles form that rain falls into. Some say rain is greater than the resurrection of the dead, as the resurrection of the dead is for the righteous, and rain is for everybody. Some say they're equivalent, so we say the blessing for rain in the blessing for the resurrection in the Amidah. Some say, based on verses, that a day of rain is as great as the day of the giving of the Torah. Others say it's even greater. There are similar points brought, and we say Torah learned by someone with good character is like dew, which is beneficial, and if learned by somebody who does not befit a Torah scholar, it will break him like harsh rain. We further bring points on the importance of learning Torah for the right reasons only, and how if done for the wrong reasons, like your own glorification, it'll not go well for you. There are similar points taught. We also compare Torah to fire, as fire catches on lots of wood together, so too Torah study is not retained by somebody who studies alone. It lists many things about how improper it is to study Torah by yourself without a study partner. We also compare Torah to a tree, as a small piece of wood can be used to ignite a large one, so too young students sharpen the minds of older ones with their questions. A sage said that he had learned much from his students and from his colleagues, more than his teachers, but from his students he had learned the most of all. It lists more points on being a student of proper character in this regard. Torah is also compared to water, which flows downwards, to teach that Torah is only retained by the humble. Torah is also compared to water, wine, and milk, to teach that the same way those are best retained in inferior earthenware vessels, so too Torah is only retained by the humble. In fact, it says the Caesar's daughter once was conversing with a sage, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, and said that it was a shame that such wisdom was retained in a person who was so physically unattractive. So he responded by asking if her father kept their wine in simple earthenware vessels, so she said yes. So he said that as they were nobility, they should store their wine in vessels of gold and silver. So she did this, and all the wine went bad, which he brought as an analogy for this point. Then she said that there are some beautiful people who are extremely learned, and he responded by saying that perhaps if they weren't so handsome, they would be even more learned. Some say that those three liquids of water, wine, and milk go bad through inattention. So too, Torah knowledge is forgotten through inattention. Some more points on how great rain is. Some say a day of rain is as great as the creation of the world. Some say on a rainy day, salvation grows. Some say rain only falls if the Jewish people have been forgiven, all based on verses. Others say rain falling means the Jewish people are not condemned to destruction. Rain is withheld, according to some, for not bringing tithes. Others say for speaking disparagingly of others. Others say due to brazen people who eventually stumble and sin and are called wicked. Some say rain doesn't fall if you neglect Torah study, which has sources brought. Some say it's withheld for theft, and to get the rain back, you should pray profusely. But it would have been better if you had just been good in the first place. There are more points on studying properly, like having a good foundational base of understanding of a Mishnah before learning others. Also, if a student is greatly struggling, it's because his teacher is not showing him a cheerful countenance. So he should send friends to his teacher to intercede on his behalf. But it says it would have been better if his behavior had been pleasing to the teacher in the first place. Also, if a generation doesn't have rain, it's because they don't pray, and they should speak to somebody who does. There are similar points brought. It's also taught that in the future, all the animals will go to the snake and say that we attack for food, but you bite people for no reason. So the snake will say that it's the same way people speak ill of others without reason or benefit. It further has teachings on the importance of sincere prayer. It's also taught that rain falls for the sake of people who are honest in business. It also says the importance of trusting in God, comparable to a famous story of trusting a weasel and a pit, where a girl fell into a pit and a boy helped her out on the agreed condition that she would one day marry him. They made the pit and the weasel their witnesses. Time passed, the girl waited to marry the boy, but the boy married someone else. The boy had 2 children, one of which was killed by a weasel, and the second fell into a pit and died. He told the whole story to his wife, who told him to divorce her to marry the first girl, which he did. It's also taught that if you better yourself in this world, you're judged more strictly and precisely above. We bring sources. It's also taught that if you joyfully bear suffering, you bring deliverance to the world. Also, God preventing rain from falling is compared to a woman in labor who doesn't give birth. We bring sources. It says one time there was a plague and a famine, and based on some verses, you're only supposed to pray for one thing at a time. So they decided to pray for the famine to end, as when God provides plenty, he does it for the living, so the plague would then end also. It also says that one time the government passed a decree against fasting, so the Jewish people accepted a fast upon themselves that they would do once the decrees were rescinded. Others say rain is negative if on a Friday, and similar. It says that sunshine on Shabbos is a gift to the poor. It also says that a rainy day is great, as even the money in your purse is blessed from it. Some say blessings are only found in things hidden from your eyes. We bring sources. A few other teachings. A day of rain is as great as the ingathering of the exiles. It's great as even soldiers cease movement on it. Rain is withheld because of people who pledge charity in public and then don't pay. It also is taught that giving tithes brings you to become very wealthy, and it's taught that this is basically the only thing you can test God with, that it'll definitely happen if you give as charity. Nowadays, by the way, it's 10% of any of your income that goes to charity. It also mentions the young son of the sage Reish Lakish, who went with his father's friend, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, after Reish Lakish passed away, which is a long story for later. It also says that rain is given even for the sake of one individual, although prosperity is given for the sake of many. But we see that many great leaders, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, had 3 great gifts given in their merit alone: the manna in the desert from Moshe, the clouds of glory from Aaron, and the well of Miriam from Miriam. It says that when Aaron passed, the clouds of glory disappeared, which is why the king of Arad thought it would be a good time to attack the Jews then. It says, however, that all 3 of these gifts returned in the merit of Moshe alone, and all disappeared in the same month that Moshe passed. So we see prosperity on behalf of one man, so we say no, as Moshe prayed on behalf of many, so he's regarded as many people. It also says a story that the sage Rav Papa would teach a class, and 3 sages who would attend the class. If they didn't get a teaching and disagreed with the logic, they would signal their disapproval to one another. The teaching sage, Rav Papa, would notice and got upset, so he had a dream where a verse was read to him, implying that those sages would pass away. So the next morning he went over to them and told them they should go in peace. A different sage also attended his class and would regularly challenge his teacher, Rav Papa, and he overheard Rav Papa during prayer asking God to help with this sage and his questions, so he stopped challenging him. There's more points on who rain falls for, and it says this one sage would go out to his garden, say certain rows needed water, and then rain would fall, watering those exact rows. There's more similar teachings. It also teaches that if there's gentle rain followed by heavy rain, it means sustained rainfall is coming, compared to a sieve. If there's heavy rain, then gentle rain, it means it's going to stop raining soon compared to goat feces. It also says that Babylonia's clouds are not accurate for determining when rain comes, and they're liars, just like the Babylonians. It also says a sage went to Babylonia, saw a basket of dates for an extremely low price, and said he was shocked people in Babylon didn't learn all the time with such food available. He ate it and became very sick, and then said it's a wonder anybody at all can learn Torah here with food like this. There's also teachings as to where rain comes from the ocean to the clouds, which removes the salt from the water, and similar. It brings sources. It also says Israel was created first, and rain is brought there first by God, and not through an agent. It also brings sources with the points on salt being removed during this rain process, and similar. It also lists the sizes of various locations. It says the measurements of Egypt is 400 parseos, which is an old measurement, by 400 parseos, a parsa being about 2.5 miles. However, it is a 60th of the land of Cush, which is itself a 60th of the world, which is itself a 60th of the Garden of Eden, which is a 60th of Eden itself, which is a 60th the size of Gehenna, and there are some who say Gehenna has no measure, while there are others who say Eden has no measure. It also says that Babylon has great abundance, as it's a swampy land and doesn't need as much rain. New Mishnah. Now, this V'sein Tal Umater blessing, when do we start saying it? Some say on the 3rd day of the month of Cheshvan, others say on the 7th, being 15 days after the Sukkot holidays, so that everybody traveling back from the holiday in Israel will have time to reach the Euphrates River before the rain falls. The Gemara says we follow the opinion which says we start on the 7th day. Some say we start this prayer 60 days into the season, 60 days after the autumnal equinox, which means you'd count on the 60th day. New Mishnah. If the 17th of the month of Cheshvan arrived and there's no rain, some individuals should do 3 fasts. They could eat and drink after nightfall, and they can work, wash, and anoint themselves, wear leather shoes, and have marital relations. If the first day of the month of Kislev arrives and there's still no rain, the court rules a fast of 3 days with the same previous qualifications. The Gemara says that the people fasting the first time are the rabbis, and they should fast on Monday, Thursday, and the next Monday, which applies by community and apparently by individuals. Also, students should consider themselves able to fast in this regard. Others disagree if you should do this, if people should consider themselves able to fast over here. It's also taught that if you fast for somebody's health and he gets better mid-fast, you should still finish the fast. Also, if you're not fasting, but you travel to a place where people are fasting, you should fast with them. If you accidentally eat, don't appear in public, and don't eat more after that. If your community is fasting and you travel to a place where they aren't fasting, you should still finish your fast. It also teaches the importance of learning Torah as you travel, and also not to take large strides, as they're bad for your eyesight. And you should travel with the light. Also, when traveling, it says to eat little. Some say for health reasons, others say to provision. There's a practical difference if you're on a trip or you're traveling between merchant inns. It also says that during a famine, you should eat very little, and the reward is to be saved from unusual death. Also, don't have marital relations during a famine unless you don't have kids. It also says that it's a very negative thing to separate yourself from your community when they're in distress. There are several teachings on this. It also says that the wicked are punished even for minor transgressions in the next world, while the righteous are punished for minor transgressions in this world. It also says that when somebody passes, all his deeds leave him, and ask him if he did each of them, and they tell him to sign, which he does, and then he certifies his own judgment, saying he was judged correctly. Some say that a person who fasts by himself, it's a wrong thing. Others disagree. Some say it depends if you're able to. Some say if you fast, you're called pious. Some say a student shouldn't fast. Some say the only public fast day is the fast of Tisha B'Av. Others say a Torah scholar shouldn't fast, as then he won't be able to learn as much. It also says you can eat or drink as much as you want before a fast. Also, if you decided to extend your fast until the next morning, the next day you don't say the Anenu prayer for fast days, as that day wasn't part of your original intended amount. It's ruled by an opinion that you may fast in hours for parts of a day, along with a few other miscellaneous teachings, such as that Moshe served during the 7 days of the tabernacle's consecration in a white garment without a hem. Some say you can only accept a half-day fast if you didn't eat anything during the first half of the day, the significance being where you decided to start your fast in the middle of the day. There are proofs, exceptions, and similar teachings. Some say you should accept a fast at the time of the afternoon mincha prayer, some say during the prayer. We argue on the source. There's also discussion as to how sleeping mixes into the fast start. Some say that you can't eat after that, others say it's fine if you dozed. Dozing is defined as being half asleep, where you can't think an original thought, but people could remind you of stuff that you'll remember. Also, some add that you should explicitly clarify that you're doing a private fast, so you don't have the stringency of a public fast, like no shoes. The point on shoes is argued. Some would wear the upper parts of their shoes, some would switch their right and left shoes, some would do nothing, as again in Babylonia, they only fasted by Tisha B'Av. Some say if you can't fast on a day you said you would, you can hold it off and do it on a different day. It also says one time a sage didn't want to postpone his fast, as he was fasting for a negative dream, which is extremely effective, by the way, especially if done the day after. You can do such a fast on Shabbos, but you'll need to fast during the week to atone for the fact that you fasted on Shabbos. New Mishnah. If those first 3 public fasts for rain didn't work, you do 3 new fasts, now with no eating after sunset, no doing work, no washing or anointing, no shoes, no marital relations, and they lock the bathhouses. If those fasts aren't answered, they would institute 7 more fasts, so that's 13 fasts total. These last 7 are stricter, as you cry out, lock the stores, but partially open them on Monday and open them on Thursday for Shabbos. If these fasts aren't answered, they should decrease their commerce, construction, planting, betrothing, marrying, and greeting each other, acting like they were censored by God. The distinguished individuals kept fasting until the month of Nisan ends. If rain falls after Nisan ends, it's viewed as a curse, based on a verse. The Gemara says that most of the prohibited things listed are as they're enjoyable, but work is prohibited as it's connected to holidays which prevent work, as both are referred to as a gathering. This is qualified further. The schedule is that on this fast, from morning to midday, you scrutinize the affairs of the town. After, we read from the Torah and the Haftorah, and at the end they pray for mercy. We bring sources. If a fast is instituted due to mourning, such as the fast of Tisha B'Av, or for an actual mourner, there's no washing from cold or hot water. If the fast is forbidding pleasure, you can only wash with cold water. The proof is that we lock bathhouses, but people can still wash in rivers. We also say you can immerse in a mikveh, which is to include even in a hot spring if cold water is not available. We also add some potential qualifications to fast days. Working at night is allowed, wearing shoes is allowed while traveling, washing your face, hands, and feet is allowed by a public fast day with hot water. Therefore, the points on this, along with prohibitions of haircuts, but allowing with a razor. It also says that a girl who's being presented to suitors for marriage should be able to put on makeup and braid her hair during a fast, but not a minor girl, as they are not eligible for marriage. This is all to argue over the point on bathing. We rule that a mourner cannot wash his entire body with cold or hot water during his 7 days of mourning. He may wash his face, hands, and feet with cold water, but no anointing himself unless it's to remove dirt. We also list the additional blessings added during the fast, whether public or private, and where they're added in prayer. There's argument if you can establish an individual blessing for yourself. After further argument, it's ruled that the Anenu prayer is said in the Shomea Tefillah prayer, which it is. We rule that pregnant women in this situation fast only the middle fasts. We also said we cry out on the fast. Some say this means we blow the shofar, others say it means we blow the shofar and say the Anenu prayer. This is debated further, along with the uses of a shofar or similar by a Shabbos, potentially, and some additional discussion. There's a story where once a community did 13 fasts, but they still weren't answered. They considered doing more, but decided not to, so as not to trouble the community. Some say this limit to fasts is only by rain. There was also a community who needed rain during the month of Tammuz, so they were told to say the prayers like by individuals, not by a community. This is argued, but that's what we decide. In regards to opening the door of your store on Mondays and Thursdays, we say you open your door on Monday a little towards the evening, and all day on Thursdays for Shabbos. If your store has 2 entrances, you lock one of them. If you have a platform which conceals your store entrance, you can open it like normal. We also said we decrease building and planting. This is joyful building and planting, by building a wedding chamber for your son or planting a royal garden. In regards to not receiving greetings, it says if somebody offers you one, enter quietly and solemnly and wrap yourself and sit like a mourner until God shows mercy. It also says an important person should only wear sackcloth if he knows he will be answered, like Yehoram, son of Achav. It also says that not all are worthy of tearing their garments like Yehoshua and Kalev did, and not all are worthy of falling on their faces like Moshe and Aaron did. Others disagree, saying Yehoshua and Kalev did both. It also says that by Mashiach, kings will rise before God, and ministers will bow. This is based on verses. It also teaches us that the righteous will be rewarded with light, while the upright will be rewarded with gladness, again based on verses. And that's the end of chapter 1.